Okay, this is where we stopped last time. We were talking about the Spirogyra. So basically, we just started the very first group, Archaeplastida. So this is how far we went. So the other member of this supergroup is this red algae. So red algae is a multicellular organism. It has some accessory pigments. So always the photosynthetic pigments are chlorophyll A or chlorophyll B. So as long as those molecules are there, those are photosynthetic. Other pigments are usually accessory pigments, meaning that they take part in photosynthesis, but they are not directly responsible for photosynthesis. What really carries out photosynthesis are still chlorophyll A and B. Since these are red and blue accessory pigments, so they do help. They help, they support the photosynthesis, but the actual photosynthesis is still done by chlorophyll A and B. They are economically very important. Even though it's important to understand how large those groups are, but I will not really hold you responsible for knowing these numbers. There are some families that are much larger than the other ones, but it is not really important to know exactly how many different species are, because this is always changing number. And then a lot of them actually live in warmer sea waters in deep seawater, as deep as like 30 meters or so, which is actually not a whole lot when we compare it, the depth of the ocean. But economically they are very important. Some of the things you are familiar with, carrageenan is one that you are familiar with. It is an emulsifying agent which is used in some of the sweets. Agar is one which is used in pharmaceutical industry, in cosmetics, also in the lab we use it quite a bit. When we grow bacteria, agar is the one that is used for that purpose. So it comes from this some of the members of this family. Then some of you probably like it because it is used in sushi, in some types of sushi, which is a little bit expensive one. This is one of the members, red algae, that looks like real red. This is another member of this family called Chara. Chara is considered actually a close relative of the land plants. It has some structure. These are actually multiple Chara plants or multiple Chara individuals here. That is a single one. So it looks like it has a stem and it has branching that can be seen, but those are not real branching. Those are nodes from which these parts of this plant exist, but it has a main axis, just like the stem in case of land plants. So it seems like this may be one of the early ancestors of the land plants, and then it has a branching pattern as well, which originates toward the top of this plant. So this Chara plant, we have some of the Chara plants live that we will see in the next lab. The next group is Chrome alveolata. Those are the members. There are actually two large supergroups that are confined into single one. Those are stamenopiles and alveolates are the two ones. There are two big groups within this superfamily, within this super group. So stamenopiles, they include brown algae diatoms, which are probably the most abundant organisms that float on the water. So these are the part of the phytoplanktons. Then golden brown algae and some water moles. Water moles are just like moles that are seen actually on land also. So brown algae is a large group, multicellular. They form many simple filaments. And then some of them are very, very large. Some of their members are more than 200 meters in length. So those are kelps that that make actually big mass inside the water. They have excessive pigments, just like we saw in case of red algae as well. So they also have a special mechanism of storing carbohydrates. The carbohydrates that they store are not glucose molecules, but those are called as laminarin. Laminarin is a type of carbohydrates that they produce. Since they are not real plants, they are plant-like organisms, they are photosynthetic organisms, so the carbohydrates are slightly modified types of carbohydrates as well. So laminarin is the type. These are some of the members of this plant, of this super group. Some of those that can become fairly large. Some of them look plant-like also, but they are not really plant-like. This is laminaria, which can become very tall, and it actually is held with some surface by making some special structure that hold them together. They don't have roots. They are not real plants, so they don't have any roots, but they can be anchored. And from those point of anchorage, they can actually become fairly tall. So these members of this family are also multicellular, and some of the seaweed, some laminaria, that is kelp, that can become very, very tall inside the seawater. Other members are harvested for food and fertilizer. They are full of, since they are full of photosynthetic material inside, so the photosynthets could serve as food for other plants. Then they are also source of algin, which is a kind of a thickening material that is used for ice cream and some other desserts. So that also comes from this group. They are also somewhat important economically. Some of the ingredients are utilized for purpose of for food. Then laminaria, which can become fairly tall, it shows some sort of differentiation pattern. Since these are considered some ancestors of the plants, so some of those features that look like some differentiation within this long leaf are differentiation that look like as if it is a real leaf. Even though it's not a real leaf, it does not have a differentiation of a leaf, but structure-wise, it shows some pattern that may have been modified with the passage of time into some vascular structure of the leaves. These diatoms are really very interesting group. Diatoms are mostly unicellular, and they reproduce sexually as well as asexually. They are a big portion of the plankton, which are utilized as food. They are not only photosynthetic, but they are also utilized as a source of food by some very large type of organisms that live in the ocean. They contain a silica shell, which is very shiny. So that is just one group here that is shown here in this image that shows actually how colorful, how attractive they are, and how kind of ornate they look like. If they are kind of a big bunch of those floating on the surface of ocean, they actually make the ocean look really very pretty. They are very small in size. They consist of two valves. It is like a kind of a jar or something, or a mint tin. So it has a top part, which is the lid part, which is slightly bigger than the lower part. So as if it kind of makes a cover or a lid on top of the bottom half of that tin. So some of those are circular, some of those are roundish, kind of a spindly in shape. They also have a lot of uses. Diatomaceous earth, which is taken from parts of the ocean, those are used as filtering agents because they make a very sand-like structure, very fine sand-like structure, which is a little bit expensive. They are also used for soundproofing materials, and they are used as polishing abrasive agents also, kind of because they are made of silica. So they have a lot of these type of uses because of the nature of their structure of the body. This is one of the diatoms. So this one is the top part, which is much larger, slightly larger, sorry, not much larger. It's slightly larger than the bottom half of the diatom. So as if it's a lid which is placed on top of the jar itself, which is the lower part of it. It is photosynthetic. It is made of silica, then it kind of takes some part from the silica. Then another member of this family are golden brown algae. They have some accessory pigments also, which give them the color and the name, which is yellow-brown retinoid accessory pigments. They are either unicellular or they are colonial in nature. They make multi-single-cell organisms stay attached with each other. So they make a colony of single-cell organisms. They usually have two flagella with the tubular here. So several of those are photosynthesized. They are mixotrophs. Some of those are mixotrophs. And mixotrophs are those organisms that can either photosynthesize, or if they are not photosynthesizing, they can phagocytose. They can engulf their food. They can eat up their food. So, they have a little bit choice there. They are a little bit more diverse in terms of their food or their feeding. They contribute to some part of the freshwater and marine phytoplankton as well, just like diatoms and other small organisms. This is one of the organisms. This is brown algae. So since it's a single cell organism, the internal structures are shown here, the nucleus and some plastid that make them photosynthetic. So they are photosynthetic in nature as well. But the color of these organisms comes from accessory pigments that give them different colors. Water moles are considered as moles. They are not found only in water, but they are also found actually on the land. They are known to have caused a lot of damage to the crops. So most of them live in the water though, but some live on land as well. So they are they parasitize insects and plants, and they are known to have caused some damage. That famous 1870s or 1840s famine that resulted from the potato famine was caused by the destruction that was caused by this organism. Their body is filamentous, filament shaped. Their cell walls are composed of cellulose. Their life cycle is that they actually spend some time as flagellated zoospores. The organisms themselves are diploid. So this is a dead goldfish that has been attacked by the water mold. So water mold completely destroys it, kind of completely degrades it, and eats up the material. So it gets the organic material from the dead organisms that way. That's why it's called water mold. Otherwise, it does not belong to the family, which is fungi. So one of the members, or one group within this superfamily, chrome alveolata, are called alveolates. That's what really gives them the name chrome alveolates, chrome alveolata, and this group is the one that are alveoli containing organisms. So some members of these are dinoflagellates, again large family single cell organisms, and the name comes from the presence of alveoli. Alveoli are those kind of sac-like structures that are present in their membrane. So the one that is shown there are several alveoli through which those cilia protrude out of the body. So that help them to kind of move inside the water. They typically have these dinoflagellates typically have two flagella, one which is the longitudinal one, and the other one that lies transverse within their own grooves. So this one here, this one's here. So it has two flagella, one that helps them to propel, that helps them to move, and other ones are wrapped around their own body, kind of transversely within the own structure of their body. Another group within this super group is called ciliates. Ciliates are called ciliates because they have cilia. They have those tiny hair-like structures on the body that help them to move. We actually saw one slide, at least last time, that was of those ciliates. Hopefully we'll see those actually again in the lab this time. They are called ciliates because of the presence of cilia on their body. They swallow their food. They can actually take small pieces, like bacteria or very small organisms, and engulf the whole organism. They can produce through asexual reproduction, but they can also go through sexual reproduction also, just like bacteria. They do conjugate with each other. So even though the conjugation is not the normal mode of their reproduction, which is asexual reproduction, but they do exhibit some form of sexual reproduction as well. Some of those are parasites. They can actually cause different diseases. Others are generally kind of safer and not really any harmful organisms. These are typical organisms from the ciliate group, Paramecium. The slide we saw actually last time was the Paramecium, and this shows the two different types of nuclei that their body contains. So, and the function of those two nuclei are different from each other. They are not both involved in maintaining the hereditary. They perform different functions. For example, here, micronucleus is for reproduction, and macronucleus is for metabolism. So their function is completely different in this regard, because this is the kind of function that you don't see in most of the organisms. Metabolism is not one of the functions of the nucleus. Nucleus usually is involved in maintaining hereditary material and passing it on to the next generation. One other subgroup of this super group is epicomplexans. Epicomplexans are non-motile obligate parasites. They are strictly parasites, like Plasmodium. So Plasmodium are very well known, because Plasmodium causes malaria. And there are many other family members of Plasmodium as well. Or another example are Toxoplasma gondii. Those are the ones that cause some sort of sickness, mental retardation in pregnant women, especially when pregnant women catch this organism, it can result into some birth defects like mental retardation in the babies. Plasmodium infects lots of people every year, actually kills lots of people every year as well. Still, there is no cure, there is no treatment available for that, but it is spread by mosquito. So it creates havoc in mostly in the Asian countries and in Africa every year. So it is caused by this parasite that belongs to this subgroup, which is called epicomplexans. So they spend some time inside the mosquito. Their life cycle depends on both inside mosquito and outside mosquito. So when the mosquitoes basically suck blood out of people, they transmit Plasmodium, some form of these Plasmodium inside the humans. And inside the humans, those forms that are transmitted inside the body, they go inside the blood cells. They actually rupture the blood cells in the liver and reduces the amount of red blood cells in those individuals. People actually have chills, people have high fever, so people continue to experience those symptoms as long as it continues to grow in their body. And once it attacks people, it usually stays in their body. So people take some treatments. There is no cure. There is no real treatment for that also. The only treatment is to kind of protect against mosquito bites. And it's hoped that if there is a vaccine, that will be effective against it. But so far there is no vaccine available also. There has been a lot of research work that has been done, to come up with that vaccine, but it is not very effective at this point. The next supergroup is excavera. Excavera are excavates that are very atypical in the shape of their mitochondria. Either mitochondria is completely missing in those organisms, or they are in a very different shape than what we are normally familiar with. Euglena is one example, and those organisms that are Euglena-like, those are called euglenids. So they live in fresh water. They are single-cell organisms. They're very difficult to classify. They are very different from each other. They look very similar, but they are still kind of a lot of differences in them. They have two flagella and a single eye spot. So eye spot it contains the photoreceptor that help them to move and towards the food or move away from the light or towards the light, and depends on the intensity of the light. So their cells are bounded by a flexible pellicle. Pellicles are structures that are made of proteins and that help them to make the shape of the structure of these cells. They have chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are also a little bit unusual. So instead of having two membranes around them, their chloroplasts have three membranes around them. They also produce carbohydrates. Their carbohydrates are called paramyelin. Paramyelin, we saw actually a case of another organism that produces limarin. This one is paramyelin. So these are again forms of carbohydrates since they are photosynthetic, so they do produce some of those carbohydrates that are stored in their bodies. That's euglena. So euglena has the nucleus, then it has these chloroplasts, and chloroplasts, since they are photosynthetic, so they store their carbohydrates inside those chloroplast structures that are called pyrenoid structures. They are contractile. They have two flagella, which helps them to move. Other flagella is mostly used for capturing their food. So they actually move those flagella and kind of stir water, and that water, when it goes inside, contains some of their food, which is very small protists or bacteria. Parabacillids are members of this supergroup as well. Parabacillids and diplomonads are the two main members of this supergroup. So euglenids is one, then parabacillids and diplomonads is another one, and then canaroplastids are the fourth group. Parabacillids are unicellular. They are endosymbionts. They do cause some diseases. So various diseases in humans are also caused by that. Trichomonas vaginalis is one, which is transmitted through protists, and it is sexually transmitted as well. Causes some vaginitis. Diplomonads are also unicellular, so those are all kind of protozoans in nature. They are also symbionts. They live inside other organisms. They completely lack mitochondria. So this is one of the